So yeah, it finally happened. It finally happened. We were wearing the clown makeup. We were all ready to be called clowns, but no, it actually happened. We got the Final Fantasy XVI trailer that we were all kind of expecting. You know, at some point over the following week, between the 2nd and the 9th, we kind of knew we were going to get something. But the Final Fantasy XVI Dominance trailer has dropped. And because we've got the trailer, we've finally got quite a bit more information about Final Fantasy XVI going forwards, at least enough to speculate a lot more and kind of see where things could be going. Don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe for future content. It helps. We're pushing on for 1K as quickly as we can, so please do get involved. But let's jump into this trailer and get going. So the trailer opens with two of the Eikons that we see in Final Fantasy XVI, and they are Garuda and Titan. Now, we do have a little bit more information on the dominance of these Eikons, with the dominant of Titan being Hugo Kupka, who is, according to the bio on the Final Fantasy XVI website, a bit of a big player in the Dhalmekian political sphere. He's kind of moved up from a position of just being a soldier, but then when he awoke as the dominant of Titan, he's been pushed into a much more prominent position. And then we also have Benedicta Harmon, who is the dominant of the Eikon Garuda. And these two have definitely got some kind of previous relationship with each other. It kind of touches on it a little bit in Hugo's breakdown, where it says Benedicta's going to teach him that money and power are far from all the world has to offer. So that kind of hints to me that there's possibly something that's gone on in the past between the two of them. Now, the trailer carries on. We see Bahamut, we see Ifrit, and then we get a shot of Titan in like the field of battle that we've seen previously in other trailers, and he just kind of decimates the whole scenario. Then we get a scene that, you know, it's slightly reminiscent of a scene that we see in Final Fantasy VIII at the training ground in the area where, you know, all the people go to kind of bunk off a little bit. And you get the scene of Squall and Quistis kind of stood looking out. And we've got a similar sort of thing going on here in Final Fantasy XVI, where we see Clive and his sort of adopted sister Jill Warwick discussing the potential for a future war. Now, the deal with Jill is that she was kind of taken from her homeland and she was kind of brought into Rosaria as a ward. So she's kind of guaranteed a degree of peace between the two nations. And this scene definitely seems to be set in the earlier phases of the game, before the events that I'd assume kind of set the main focus of the story in motion, which is kind of what we see go down in the previous trailer with Ifrit and Phoenix and Joshua and all that kind of business. So yeah, I would put this scene really early in the game, just purely based on Clive's age. And I am saying Clive, I ain't saying Cleve. Now we then see what is probably Clive and Joshua's father. We don't get the name given to us or anything like that, but it seems to be the Archduke of Rosaria, which we'll come round to in a second why I think that's the case. But then we get straight into a bit of combat where we see an older Clive taking on an Imperial Lancer. We see the first hint of being able to hold the abilities of Eikons and being able to rotate through the Eikons in the top left-hand corner while this combat's going on. You can see that we've got Phoenix and we've got Garuda there, and that's at level 18, so yeah, that's the first kind of hint that you get, and that L2 is going to cycle through them for you. Then we see the scene which kind of makes me think that he is the Archduke of Rosaria, which is where he's kind of leading things, and you've got Joshua alongside him. I'm definitely getting the vibe that that guy is the Archduke of Rosaria. Rosaria, whatever. Dave. Now we get into a bit more combat at this point. And this seems like it's earlier in the game. Clive's only level 13. He seems to only have access to Phoenix's powers. And he kind of maybe looks a little bit younger. It's difficult to make out though. I mean, just going off the level and going off the fact he's only got Phoenix, we can put it early in the game, I'd say. We're also going to see lots of things start popping up on the right-hand side. Clearly, they're little achievements and little special things that you can do in combat that give you like a rank, I assume, or something similar to that. Mainly just so that you get a boost of XP or something, I assume. But yeah, you can see all them kind of popping off on the right-hand side. And then we get a glimpse of some of the attacks that are in use. And we also get what seems to be kind of like the way that this is going to work as far as the attacks go. But I'll dive into that one a little bit later. But as you can see, with Phoenix, you've got attack, fire, Phoenix shift, and jump. You seemingly hit R2, and you replace attack and fire with Rising Flame and Scarlet Cyclone. And it looks like Rising Flame is the attack that we can see now, where the wing kind of rises up and hits whoever's in front of Clive. Now this is a completely new area, I don't think we've seen this anywhere before, but going off a monologue that we hear later on in the trailer, I would assume that this is a group of people from the Holy Empire of Sanbreque, I believe. That seems to be the most likely. And if this is right, I would assume that going off the symbology for the nation, you know, the flag that they use, things like that on the Final Fantasy XVI website, that Shiva is probably their icon. Now moving on, we see a much higher level Clive, and with a lot of different things going on in the top left-hand corner. So first things first, you've got the perks that you can see right at the very top. I assume that they're passive buffs and things like that you can either learn or put on yourself pre-combat, something along those lines. And looking at the icons that he's got access to, we can see that not only have we still got Phoenix and Garuda, but we've also got Titan at this point as well. Now this leads me obviously to believe that, you know, Clive can clearly hold the power of numerous icons. And if we look at the deal with Clive, he was expected to become the dominant of Phoenix, but in the end he didn't, and Joshua, his younger brother, did. So this is making me think that I mean, there's obviously something special going on with Clive, and we will get into this a little bit later on in the video. But at this point, like, the assumption is that he can take on the powers of the Eikon at the very least, if not completely absorb them and control them. It kind of depends how this is going to work. I mean, at the minute in combat, it looks like he can only use an aspect of the Eikon's power. So he can use certain attacks of Garuda's, certain attacks of Phoenix's, certain attacks of Titans, but we don't actually see him summoning any of these Eikons. So does he have the full capability with the Eikon, or is there something massively different going on with Clive, where he can kind of take bits of each of the Eikons? Remains to be seen, but it gives you a lot of food for thought. Also in this section, we get a glimpse at how rotating through attacks works on the fly. So like I say, you use L2 to cycle through the icon that you've got access to. But then in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got, you know, the list of attacks. So we'll use Garuda again in this instance as an example. We've already covered it with Phoenix, but as you can see, you've got Jump, Attack, Aero, and then on the right-hand side, you've got Deadly Embrace, which seems to be... See, I don't know, it could be a special attack, or it could be summoning the actual summon. I have no idea. I assume it's probably like a super special attack, because when you hit R2, Attack and Aero are then replaced with Gouge and Wicked Wheel, and obviously you've still got Deadly Embrace still there. So that seems to be how you're going to cycle through your skills. L2 to cycle between which icon you've got, and then R2 to switch between basic attacks and special attacks. That's what it's looking like to me. And then obviously bottom left you've got your potions and things like that. You can map them to your D-pad. Now the next scene is a little bit interesting. So when you watch the English trailer, this is assuming that it's the character that's on screen that's even speaking, because you know that we've seen trailers do that before. But if the person on screen right now is the one that's speaking, we might be looking at the main antagonist of the game, potentially. Or we could just be looking at the back of Clive after he's finished banging Garuda, who knows. But the important thing is the dialogue that's going on here, I think. So we hear in the English trailer they're saying that they're going to unite the dominants so that they can bring an end to the strife, which possibly feeds into the earlier speculation about absorbing Eikon powers potentially, or maybe even absorbing the whole Eikon. But if you go off a translation of the Japanese trailer by Audrey over on Twitter, much love to Audrey as always, the same line in Japanese talks about defeating the dominants and getting the people together who have the power and forming a new order. Now these could be very similar. If someone's going around absorbing the power of the Eikons from the dominants, you could kind of assume that they would feel like they are uniting them. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, that. Most of it's pretty similar as far as I can tell between the Japanese and the English trailers. I've not had a full look at the Japanese one, if I'm being completely honest. I've just kind of skimmed over it. But this difference kind of stood out to me a little bit. It could be nothing. It could be the same thing and they've just not done the best job of translating it. But who knows? We next see Clive fighting a Curl at level 26 this time, and he's got Phoenix, Shiva and Garuda as his icons. So we do see at level 33 that he's got Titan involved in there, but Shiva's nowhere to be seen, which makes me potentially think that you can only have 3 icons equipped at any one time. Maybe you have to switch them out. Maybe Phoenix has to be permanently equipped and you can switch the other 2 out. I'm not too sure. I'm also quite intrigued as to what these charges are. I think it's possible that these charges that are underneath Clive's HP bar could relate to that attack that's on the right-hand side of the attack. So in the bottom right-hand corner, the right option. So with Phoenix, it would be Phoenix Shift. Maybe having those charged up allows you to use that special ability. I'm not too sure, but maybe it's something else. We then see a finger pointing at a map, and I believe that it's possibly pointing at the location of the Crystalline Dominion, but I'm not 100% on that, so if you've got any info or any thoughts, drop them in the comments below, clear me up. I don't know if there's like a full-blown map. I know there's the map that's on the Final Fantasy XVI website, but there's not really any markings or anything like that on it. But yeah, it feels like it could be the Crystalline Dominion that's being pointed at there. But the Crystalline Dominion's kind of like an area, it's almost like a no-fly zone or a neutral zone, which is kind of like in the middle of the map, and according to the Final Fantasy XVI website, it's kind of ran by the surrounding nations. You know what I mean? Each one of them kind of sends a group of people there, and they kind of maintain diplomacy and things like that. But there is apparently no dominant that resides in this region, even though the tallest of the Mother Crystals exist there. So I think there's going to be something to keep an eye on in that area. But anyway, back to the trailer. We then get to see the large combat scene that we've seen a few times in the previous trailer. And I believe that the warrior that we see in combat that it kind of focuses on is the dominant Hugo Kupka, who's Titan's dominant. Just due to the fact that it seems to be he's the one speaking as the scene plays out. We see him in a few other locations, as well as fighting 1 versus 1 with Clive. And then very soon after that, we see Titan kind of emerge in what I assume is the same battlefield. So we could potentially see that as Hugo was in the combat fighting away, and then he summoned his dominant because another dominant arrived. Something like that. There could be anything going on there, but that seems to be the flow of what's going on in this section at the very least. And that leads into the scenes of Shiva and Titan again that we've seen numerous times before. We also get to see an absolutely epic looking encounter between Bahamut and Odin. Now Odin we can safely say is the icon for Waleed because of the flag design, but then Garuda's dominance also from Waleed. I'm definitely not saying that right. But does this mean that there's more than one dominant per region, potentially? Because we do get on the website that Benedicta, who's the dominant for Garuda, is in command of Waleed's elite intelligence kind of unit. So she's definitely in Waleed, or at least part of that organization. But then when you look at the flag for Waleed, you know, the kind of the banner for it, it's definitely Odin. So does this mean that we could have 2 icons in one nation, potentially? That could open things up a little bit to a lot more icons being in this game than what we've seen so far. And then we get the first shots of something pretty exciting, which is Eikon versus Eikon combat. We have Ifrit and Phoenix showing HP bars and their icons, yep. And then we see Ifrit and Titan in the exact same setup, so it very much seems that Eikon versus, well, it definitely seems that Eikon versus Eikon combat is on. How much control we'll have over that, I don't know, because we don't see any inputs. So I have no idea how much control we're going to have over that. At first I thought, oh, could this be like a turn-based kind of thing where you know, each of the icons acts out? But more and more it's starting to feel like it's a bit more of a cinematic kind of thing, maybe with QTEs or something like that. Similar to the Leviathan fight in Final Fantasy XV, if I remember correctly. That had quite a few QTEs in it, and then you were doing damage as well. Maybe this is going to be something like that. But then we see something a little bit weird. Yeah, weird. So we see another one of these Eikon versus Eikon battles going on. And we see Ifrit on the left-hand side, presumably under our control, or at least on our side, because, you know, his HP bar is yellow. That means he's good. Well, this time, in place of Titan, we see a completely different icon, completely different icon, and no name. We've just got 3 question marks for the name. That's it. Now, it doesn't match any of the other announced icons so far. And when you get a look at its physicality a bit on screen, it does kind of have a look of maybe an Alexander, but I feel like it's too... Like with Alexander, I'd expect it... Yes, it would be made out of stone, but I'd expect it to be cleaner looking than this. This looks rocky and kind of turbulent. So I don't think it'd be Alexander, but could be wrong on that. Possibly an evolved version of Titan, maybe, but again, that could be a reach. We can also guess that this is far later on the game due to the fact that we see damage numbers around 300,000, but there could be other explanations that bring it earlier, like maybe it's a fight that we're not involved in, we just see it play out and it kind of foreshadows what's coming in the future. That's definitely a possibility, but more than likely it's later on in the game. Now, as far as this guy goes, again, I have no idea. The imagery, the icon itself doesn't really ring any bells. An evolved version of Titan would maybe be a possibility. Like, I don't think it's a boss, as in, like, I don't think it's just a random enemy or a boss, because it's got the exact same setup as every other icon, except for the fact that the picture isn't one that we've seen, and there's no name. So it's almost, I'm 99% certain that that is an icon. Which one it is, though, no idea. So answers on a postcard in the comments below. But yeah, let me know what you think, because yeah, I'm drawing a blank at the minute. Drawing a blank. But I mean, if you think about it, we've got 8 announced icons. This is a 9th icon, I'm going to say. So who knows how many more there could be. Now, we get a glimpse of Ramuh, which I am extremely happy about because he's one of my personal favourite summons in the whole franchise. So I'm very happy that we've got the big guy back. But then we get a quick shot, which is part of the reason why I don't think that the unknown creature, I don't think it's just a normal boss. Because when you look at this fight here between Shiva and Liquid Flame, which... beautiful nod to Final Fantasy V. Thank you for pointing that out to me as well, Ultros. I would have remembered eventually, but you were on it immediately, so good job. And as you can see, next to Liquid Flame's name and health bar and everything like that, there's no picture. There's not the same setup that you get when it's an icon. So, yeah, I'm 99% certain that that question mark figure is definitely an icon. Now, as far as Liquid Flame goes, could go a couple of ways. I mean, it could just be a generic fight, could just be anything. Could just be anything. Or it could relate to something that we've seen in the previous trailer, which is when Joshua's on the floor covered in blood and everything's going wrong, you know, Ifrit, Phoenix, things like that are appearing. We see a man, well, a humanoid shape made of fire. Potentially this could be it. Not too sure, but definite FF5 reference. And given that the director worked on FF5, not surprised. And if you look at the icons that are available, you can see that you've got Phoenix, you can see that you've got Garuda, and you can see that we've got Ramuh at this point. So how is Shiva being used? Yeah. So this is the only hint that I have found in both trailers of Final Fantasy XVI that there may be at least some kind of, I don't want to say party mechanic, but companion mechanic. I think that's going to be as good as we get. I don't think there's going to be a party, because we've not actually seen any party member active in combat, but someone's using Diamond Dust right now, and it isn't Clive, because Clive has got Phoenix equipped with Garuda and Ramuh ready to go. So there's no Shiva there. So yeah, this is the only thing that I've seen that kind of hints to me that there might be some party combat still. Might. We then see Garuda versus Ifrit, with Garuda dealing around 30k damage in one hit, which is again making me think that the question mark guy, that's probably quite a bit later in the game, considering we hit it for 300k at that point, or at least Ifrit hits it. And then we keep going with the more Eikon versus Eikon kind of party times. They definitely put a big focus on, you know, Eikon combat and how important the Eikons are to the story in general. It seems like the way that Clive gets any kind of ability, all of our skills and abilities seem to be tethered to the Eikons. So yeah, they're going to be essential. They're going to be real important, not just gameplay-wise, but narratively as well, with each of the major powers kind of being represented by their own Eikons. We go back to the scene that I saw earlier on, the gentleman who I said was probably part of the Holy Empire of Sanbreque. And this is where I get that from, because he's specifically talking about the Empire surviving. Like, oh, if people die, the citizens will breed. If houses get knocked down, we can build new ones, but the Empire will survive. That's the vibe. So, yeah, I would say that he's the Holy Empire of Sanbreque. Everything fits. We get a quick Eikon rundown, which, yeah, pretty cool. I like the way the music kind of tethers into it, and I've got to say the music in this trailer, oh, real good. Real good. And then after that, we hear a voice which kind of says, "Awaken, child of fate," while Clive is centered. But the thing that interests me at the end of this is that we see Ifrit attacking Ifrit, which is a bit weird, considering it seems like there's only one of each Eikon. And this is where I think the awakened child of fate thing kind of comes into it. I think there could be two of these people, both in control of an Ifrit. One of them being Clive, and one of them, you know, not being Clive. But we don't see any indication of Clive using Ifrit. The only time we see Ifrit is in, you know, Eikon versus Eikon combat. But we have seen him against a variety of Eikons. We see Ifrit against Titan, we see Ifrit against the question mark dude. So there's got to be something going on with Ifrit. There are a lot of possibilities when it comes to this. The Ifrit versus Ifrit thing. I mean, could it be Dark Eikons? Could we be seeing the same sort of deal that we see in Final Fantasy X? With, like, you've got all the Aeons, but then you've also got the dark variants of all of these Aeons that come out in the later stages of the game. Could this be what we're seeing with Ifrit? Could Ifrit be special, and then there's a light version and a dark version of Ifrit? Clive being the light version, I would assume, and then there is a dark version, and this is why we see this conflict between the two of them. This is potentially why we see in the trailer Ifrit and Phoenix facing down against each other in the first trailer, that is. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities going on there. There is a lot of possibilities going on there. But that brings us to the end of the trailer. Obviously, release date, summer 2023. Not the best news. You know, we'd probably like the game to come a bit earlier than that, but it is what it is. So there's a few things to touch on briefly before we wrap the video up now that we've gone over everything. First off, like, how many Eikons are there going to be in the game? We've got the 8 that have been announced, which are Phoenix, Titan, Garuda, Ramuh, Shiva, Odin, Bahamut, and Ifrit. So there's 8. Then we've also got what seems to be a second Ifrit, because I don't know if it's me, but when I'm looking at this, one Ifrit looks more red than the other ones. Then we've also got the question mark Eikon, which puts us at a guaranteed 9, possibly 10 if there is a dark Ifrit. What else is there going to be? How many more Eikons could we see in this game? Or do you think maybe they're going to stick to this tight cast, and Ifrit is the one that's, you know, got that alternate version of itself to kind of give us that protagonist-antagonist kind of struggle? But that's speculation. We could have just one Ifrit and the antagonist controls Ifrit. Not too sure, but we definitely see 2 of them at the end of the trailer, so that's a bit weird. Another question that I've got is, how does Clive acquire these Eikon powers? Like, does he actually have to, like, defeat the Eikon, defeat the Dominant? Because we do see him fighting Titan's Dominant, and that's another thing as well. Titan's Dominant's definitely been set up as an antagonist here, but I don't think he's going to be the main antagonist. I think he's going to be kind of like a mid-antagonist. He's going to be the guy that you think's the bad guy in the early stages or something like that. But then things are going to change up. That's the assumption I'm making at the minute. And then the other big question that I've got at the minute is, who's the question mark guy? What's the deal with him? Like, what is the deal with that Eikon? I mean, we see it take about 330k damage, and that chops off, what, between a quarter and a third of its HP? So, you know, it's a considerable fight. I would assume it's quite late on in the game. Like, that would be the assumption given the numbers that are involved. You don't normally see numbers like that early on in the game. But yeah, lots of questions, lots of new information that's gone up on, like, the website, the Final Fantasy XVI website, as well as in this trailer. There's a lot of things to speculate on. I'm going to take a little bit of time now to let things sit, let things stew, and potentially start cranking out a couple of videos about, like, what the direction could possibly be here. Obviously, I'm not the happiest about the game moving towards a more action orientation. I do prefer my turn-based when it comes to Final Fantasy. That's just what it is. That's what it's always been. And I don't like this changing of genres. But at the same time, considering what it is, which is an action RPG game, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So yeah, we'll definitely be getting involved in this. We'll be talking a lot more about theories. We'll be talking about potential trailers that could drop in the future. We'll be covering everything. But what do you think? What are you thinking about this game? How are you feeling about the game? What do you think about the question mark guy? Do you have any thoughts on how Clive goes about acquiring these Eikon powers? Is he defeating and killing the Dominants and taking over the Eikon? Or is it more of a partnership sort of thing? And what's going on with Shiva in that liquid flame fight? Because we don't have Shiva equipped, but Shiva's being used in combat. So is this the big hint that there is still some sort of, I don't want to say party mechanic, but like I say, a companion mechanic? Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop a like on the video, subscribe for future content, but more importantly than anything, have a great day.